no other candidate was going around with security detail, I was. And it was a reminder that there are safety precautions that I, as a Samoan man, with a Samoan family who love being in New Zealand, had to take. So yeah, I think I'm still a bit broken now. I'm definitely saddened over it, but it fuels my desire to stay strong in the advocacy that we do. Ia malo soifua maua man langi mama o lo ingoa o whanana Efeso Collins o lo tina o loto mau Collins o nuu o lo tina o satufia satupaitia o lo tamau tau ili CEO Collins sa whanau I malie I uporu. Ia fo le pito toke lau o lo tama. My parents came to New Zealand in the 1960s, I think the early 1960s, around 62. They met at Orange Hall, I thought I'd throw that one in too, in Ponsonby. And we lived in Otara in a state house. So they lived there, and then when they were developing state houses, that's when Mum and Dad moved out to Otara. I was born in 1974, so I'm currently 48, I think, years old, and now live in Otahu with my wife and 2 children. So I was fortunate in that I'm the youngest of 6 children, and so growing up in Otara meant that we had a really nice house. I thought it was a beautiful home, and we started off in a state house on Featherston Cres, and then when I was at primary school, at East Tamaki Primary School in Otara, we moved around the corner to Preston Road, which is where I grew up most of my time. It was that time where lots of state housing was being developed in South and West Auckland, and our parents really loved our house. My mum was really into gardening, and so we had this huge garden. In fact, I felt like we had a maumanga at the back of our first house because Mum had, remember the taro leaves, all her plantation type growth was there, and she loved flowers, colourful flowers. Mum and Dad bought their first house in 1992, so years after, and I think the house costed like 90,000. I wish we held on to it, because had we held on to it, we'd be millionaires now. But that was a real moment of pride and achievement for my parents, because that's why we came here. Good opportunities, go to school, and then hopefully get a house. Our house was the house that everyone came through. So when everyone was coming from Samoa, we would host them. So lots of my cousins came and they all stayed with us. And at the time we had a 4-bedroom house on Preston Road, and that's the house that everyone came through. It was where we got to know everyone. But I remember it too being a bit of a pressure point too, because as so many people were coming through the house, all our family konga'is were there as well. I remember the financial pressures that Mum and Dad were facing. Mum was, at the time, she was working at a factory called New Zealand Forest Products, and Dad was driving taxis. And, you know, when you've got an influx of people from Samoa, everyone's happy that you're all there, but we all kind of slept anywhere and everywhere. As I look back, there's real joy about being in Otara, but there were major challenges around finances, whether it was the church, sending money home to Samoa, looking after Dad's parents as well. But all of those things created a number of challenges. So my oldest sisters and cousins all worked at the local Foursquare at the dairy, and after school I would always go there and get lollies. I was at school in the 80s during a time where a lot of my reports, if you read them now, said stop speaking Samoan at home and just speak English. And I think the theory was that if we're speaking more English both at school and at home, then everyone's going to benefit from it. And so the challenge for our family was Mum and Dad had beautiful Samoan, they were raised in Samoa, and then we're learning English, and English was everywhere. English was at TV, on TV, English was at school. But given that we were good, humble people, we listened to our teachers. And so my brothers and sisters were all discouraged from speaking Samoan at home. And when you look at linguistics, they have a thing called BICS and CALPS, and it's the way in which we capture languages and the way in which we become proficient. And so what was difficult was that Mum and Dad had low proficiency in English, and they're trying to use that low proficiency to teach us English. in the home. So there's always that mismatch, whereas the research is really clear now. If we were learning Samoan in the home, it would have been a much more beneficial experience. I'm fortunate because I lived in Samoa with my parents for a couple of years when Dad was an itinerant minister doing work in Samoa. And so they left me with Mum's parents. Well, they did their thing, and I was at home in the village with my grandparents. And so when I came back to New Zealand for years 7 and 8, I was put in a class that was getting English support. So I came back only speaking Samoan. So I was the fob kid in our house and everyone just laughed at me. But as a result of that, I stopped speaking Samoan again, and so it was unlearned because the focus was on English. And so had this challenge all my life around having to unlearn Samoan, now trying to relearn Samoan and recapture, I guess, those language basics that are there. So it was a challenge, and I think I look back on our history and I'm sad because I think it was unbeknown to the teaching staff. I don't know that it was deliberate, but it's like a micro form of racism in that we were being told to leave our heritage languages because they weren't valued. Yeah, at the time it didn't bother me because I just thought this is what we're supposed to do, and because the teacher said this is going to help us, we just did it. It wasn't until later that I reflected on it, but at the time we thought this is going to help because the logic at home was Dad would say to us, if you learn English, do well at school, you'll get a good job and then we'll get a house. We thought we were doing the right thing by being discouraged to speak Samoan, and I look back now and I'm almost jealous of my friends who all went to Efeso and the Methodist church where they got strong Samoan, and we were the family that went to a Pentecostal church, but it was all in English. And so there's a part of me that thinks there's a part of our identity that we're trying to reclaim, and that's going to be a challenge for people in my shoes who are trying to do their best to feel Samoan again with the language part clearly part of us. So we all made the decision for me to go to university because no one in my family had gone to university, and now child number 6, it was, well, it's up to you now to go to university. All our lives, we knew in the house, Mum and Dad wanted one of us to become a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant, or a whaiwhiau. None of us became any of those things. And so when I finished school, it was the days we did bursary, and it was enough to get into university. But I was offered a job in TV, and I remember talking with Mum in particular and asking Mum, what should I do? Should I pursue this career in the media or go do that? Or should I go to university? And Mum said, go to university. That's what we've always wanted, and it'll be really good if you go. So that's how we went to university. And my older brothers and sisters all said, look, we're working now. We'll support you in whatever you need. There was pressure too, because you look around the church and everyone else's kids is going to university. So you kind of feel that peer pressure. And so they said, well, Efeso, you got enough to go, and so you go. Because the pressure at church was because everyone was like, oh, look at my son is studying this and my daughter's going to be a doctor. And we had people in our church where one of the kids had gone to Otara to study medicine. And, poor my parents, my dad is the whaiwhiau, and he's looking at us kids like, and am I going to get anything out of these kids? I said, Dad, we just pray. So it was great for Mum and Dad, finally, for one of their kids to go to university. This isn't something we talk about, but it exists. There's almost this unspoken competition as to who's got the most kids at university. And so my poor dad, whaiwhiau, and no one's at university. So that was part of the reason. I guess when you look at it in that context, that's why one of us chose to go. And I want my mum and dad, in particular Mum, to know that we're doing our best for them. And that was a dream that they had. Mum would talk about one of her kids going to university all the time. And so I thought, oh, yeah, it's not going to be too hard. I've got enough. Surely it's a bit like school, just bigger. The social activism came because I did education. There's a picture of different animals, and behind them is a massive tree, and then there's this old teacher in front of them, and it says, everyone sits the same exam, climb the tree. And I remember thinking about that picture and realizing then that we all have different talents, that we've got different leanings, but the test is always the same. And that's going to suit some people more than others. So like the bird will get to the top of the tree with ease. You take the goldfish out of the water, it'll die and it won't get the chance to sit the exam. And it was there as I was learning about the differences of life and understanding how my generation had started off with student loans. It was the year they introduced flat fees in education. And I thought, so I was meeting people in class and they didn't have a student loan. They were saying, oh, no, my parents pay for me. And I think, oh my gosh, bro, I've got a student loan. And it was there that I started to understand that the system isn't fair for everybody. And that's what got me really active in issues around social economic justice, and maybe later on around climate justice as well. So that's where it grew. I got involved in student politics. I became the cultural affairs officer in my second or third year and loved being amongst students. I've always enjoyed talking with people. My dad is a church minister, like I've said, so speaking in front of people wasn't new. And I don't think any of us Samoan kids, any of that is new, because we all do White Sunday. So we're used to having the mic, and we're used to our parents giving us that look like, you wait till we get in the car if you get your koloko wrong. So those White Sunday experiences were things that all of us will remember. So that being in front of people wasn't difficult. So that's what I loved about university. And then I was part of groups. I was part of the Samoan Students Association, Pacific Students for Christ, and then I joined other activist groups like AUSA. We were doing things, fighting for free education. And all of those things combined made for an experience at university that meant we can really ruffle feathers. We don't have to see the world the same way, and that's what university was good for. I look back now and I think when I stood for president of the Auckland University Students Association, I recognised then that the level of racism that existed in the student body was going to be massively challenging. And I remember going to things, and this is going back to 1998 when it was the year that I stood, because you become president the following year, but having people yell out, we don't need no black coconut running the organisation. And people would have stickers on doors on the backs of toilets with "Don't vote for the coconut." We were having a meeting when I was president, and we were having a meeting in the quad, and it was huge. Everyone was there, and there were people on the second floor of the common rooms. This was before it was cultural space, and people yelling, "Oh, you black coconuts," in the meeting. And "Shut up, you black bee," and all of that kind of stuff when we were chairing the meeting. And I found it unbelievable behaviour. I thought, this is reprehensible, because we're supposed to be in a place where we can celebrate learning. And the fact that you had young people with those attitudes screaming out those obscene comments meant that all of us were now fully aware of what that racism looked like. And that was tough, especially at the time I was maybe 22 years old. To have that as the thing that people started to have a go at you on is really unfair. And I felt sad, I got angry, and I felt confused. Confused because I was at a university that was saying we embrace people from different backgrounds. We want kids like Efeso to come to university from South Auckland, because we don't get many brown kids from South Auckland through our university doors. And I was glad to be at university. I loved university. I met all my friends there. I met my wife at university. But this is that dark side of people's thinking that I was confronted with immediately during that election. We got into politics, and I use the plural specifically because it was something that Fia, my wife, and I talked about, for some time. Both of us have education backgrounds, and I used to do a lot of political commentary on TV and radio. And then one day someone challenged me and said, "You should get involved. You were student president however many years ago, so why not get involved?" So we talked about it, and I thought, Joyce, let's do this, and let's get involved. So that was the discussion that led to being involved in politics. And I feel like the university prepared me really well for politics, because I feel like I faced 20 years on very similar challenges. I remember when I was chair of the Otara Papatoetoe local board for a term, that's 3 years. I remember getting emails where people said, "We don't want no effing coconut leading our area." And I was thinking, Oh, I thought these people all finished back in 1999 when I was president. And here I was 15 years later getting the same kind of attacks, but this time via email. So, we'd gotten really clever, and rather than yell it out, because we don't want to fight, we email it instead, and we hide behind these pretend fake profiles that we make up email addresses over. But we got into politics because both Fia and I have a heart to challenge the system when it's unfair. When we see injustice, it kind of gets our blood excited that we can be part of a movement to change things. And by being involved in politics, we can. Politics is a lot about where the resources go. And where there's under-resourced parts, it's often poorer areas, browner areas. And we believe that by being in politics, we could advocate for areas like Otara to get the resources it needed to flourish. And so that's why we got into politics. And one experience that you'll know well is I had tweeted that I believe Police 10-7 only enhances racist stereotypes of particularly young brown people. And the research worldwide supports what I had said. And within a few weeks, we had death threats on our family. We had the police come through with the bomb squad. I remember it was such a weird experience, but they said, oh look, they've named your whole family, which is different because usually they threaten a life. They don't threaten whole families. In this regard, in this instance, they had threatened my whole family. And they had, we were waiting for them to come through our home and through my office because they were just waiting for the bomb squad from the airport to be freed up from doing whatever they do to come to our home. I mean, I look back on that experience, I often wonder who would threaten at the time my 8-year-old daughter and my 1-year-old daughter. I find it insane. But I remember that was something, again, Fia and I sat down after that experience, weeks after. We went through it. I took leave from the office. The police were kind of watching us, from a distance. They were travelling with us, and we had security detail. The council organised security detail. It was one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had in my life, where I would go to places and there would be security following me. Often there were times where I would ride in the security car because that's what we had to do for us to be safe. And the bit that I don't talk a lot of now, but we had security detail around the girls' schooling as well. And for a parent, that's like the worst experience because you want to do the best you can, be a voice for the community. But at the same time, I'm thinking about, are my kids safe? And so it was good that, Fia as a consultant had a bit more time to step away, check her texts. And that became our reality for at least 6 months. And I kind of feel like my experience at Auckland University followed me into my experience at Auckland Council, where the aggravation around the colour of my skin became the thing that people looked at with us when I was in politics. I think there's a part inside me that broke. In my life, I've had to be reminded that I'm bright. And it was one of the things I struggled with all my life was I always believed I was dumb. I had a teacher at school who said to me that I was dumb. And so it's something you carry. And then you go through all of these experiences in politics. And I think what the racism did in that very public expression of hate was it made me doubt my ability to stand up. And so, when you're a bit broken, I was very broken, when you're struggling to come to terms with whether you should be in this. And then there was the doubt around the safety of my girls and my wife. Fia's a strong woman, but weeks after all of this happened, when you've got the police constantly ringing you, when you're going to places with security detail. Even during the mayoral campaign, I had security detail with me. It really, it cuts at my confidence. I think I'm called to kind of chaos and pressure cookers. I think I'm made for that stuff. But I've never wanted it to impinge on my family, and I never thought it would. And I think that's why I get emotional, because in a way it's my life, but it's not. It's our lives. I'm thinking of my wife's safety. I think of my girl's safety. I think I'm still a bit broken now. I'm definitely saddened over it, but it fuels my desire to stay strong in the advocacy that we do, because, man, my girls are brown, and the research is clear that if you got brown girls, they're the lowest paid, they're treated the poorest, and I want them to see mum and dad standing up strong for them. It's often been said that we should leave our families out of politics, and I've got real respect for those people who try their best to leave their families out. The difference we've got to understand now is we do things together. Everything's collective for us. Similar to the reason I went to university was, Efeso, you've got to go because we're all doing these things. So it's part of the family package. If you look at Samoa, we see families a lot. We know who families are connected to. We know the villages that people come from. That speaks immediately to communities who are endorsing and supporting politicians. And so whilst I think it's important that we leave families aside, that we don't pick on them, the reality is sometimes the media do go after them. And in my case, where we were threatened, we were gone after too. But that's something we've got to work out, because the context for us is I'm a weak person without my wife and my girls nearby. I need my friends. I need the boys beside me to stand up. And politics now, in the West in particular, has to accept that for our context, it happens together. And I hope that those of us living in New Zealand or having West experiences are developing a way in which we'll understand that families are part and parcel of the politician's expression.
We are tangata tiriti, and we have nothing to fear. As a New Zealand-born Samoan living in South Auckland, I've experienced, written about and spoken about racism in this country. I've also been on a well-publicised journey in understanding the needs and views of our rainbow communities, and I have a long way to go. And my message to whānau who often experience the sharp end of discrimination, disabled, ethnic, rainbow, brown, seniors and neurodiverse, is thank you for trusting us with the responsibility of facilitating a new discussion on how we move forward together and make possible what was once deemed impossible. The American civil rights activist James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." If I was to inspire anyone by getting to this house and my work over the next 3 years, I hope that it's the square pegs, the misfits, the forgotten, the unloved, the invisible. It's the dreamers who want more, expect more, are impatient for change, and have this uncanny ability to stretch us further. And finally, to my family, it's o whaia linga oi o peta, maltina peleina ya asalemo ek elika. My parents, Dad, Tauli Ili Sio, and my brother Thomas, who are both watching from heaven. And my mum, Loto Mau Collins, who is here in the gallery. Thank you all. To the most amazing women in my life, with whom I'd like to wish a belated happy Valentine's. To my beautiful wife, Fia, Gabriela and Asalemo, I love you. Gabriela and Asalemo, a quick reminder that I will be your Valentine's forever, because in true Samoan fashion, you can't get married till you're 50. Mr. Speaker, my favourite part of the Mass on Sunday is when our parish priest will rise and say, "The Mass has ended." It's about that time that I start to think about what we're going to be having for lunch. But our priest continues, now with his arms outstretched, and he will close with this charge to the congregation: "Go now in peace to love and serve the Lord." Mr. Speaker, it is with that spirit, the spirit of peace and love and service, with which my extended family who are here today come to this house. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa.
Things that happens all the time is when I'm about to, like before I embarked on going for the mayoralty, and when I gave my maiden speech as a councillor, fear holds my face. I think my love language is touch, and so my wife will come, and before we speak, usually just before I go on, she'll come and she'll hold my face and she'll look at me and she'll say, Efeso, look at me. And I'm thinking, hurry up, I've got to go on stage in 2 seconds. And she'll get me to look at her and she'll say, Fess, I love you. And she'll hold me in that space. I love you. You can do this. Nothing is holding you back. You've got a God who loves you. Think of your girls. And those are the times, those are the things that really, they do something in me where I feel like I'm on top of the world, where I can take on any challenge, is just knowing that my wife loves me. Knowing when I got home from speeches that I'd made, wondering what Dad thought, that when he said to me, Jesus is your only friend, that was his expression of love. And that motivates me now, because I want to be motivated by love, not by anger, though anger is really helpful because it helps me stay alive and things, but I want a society that is genuinely loving and caring, and that's what motivates me to do what I do now.
E le tū whaamaunga se tangata. Efeso's translation of this was that nobody would stand, succeed, or suffer alone. This has been true for myself and my daughters. We are here because so many of you have stood with us in our sadness and pain. Our family and friends miss Efeso every day, and we're committed to continuing his legacy and the phenomenal work he dedicated his life to. With this in mind, I am excited to announce our intention to launch a foundation in Efeso's memory. For now, it is a work in progress, a labor of love. The girls, our dedicated team of volunteers, and I will take the time necessary to ensure the foundation truly reflects Efeso's values and passions. Many generous souls have reached out wanting to donate to us. Our prayer is that this foundation will become a place of hope, somewhere you can trust will give back to our people and community.